Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. That's right, this is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon in the Southern Tier. I am happy to be with you here today. It looks like the internet is all up, and we are able to speak with you. If this is the first time that you are seeing the channel, we thank you, we welcome you, and let you know that we do long-form political commentary on this channel. And every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we reach out to you to speak with you about the issues that matter to you. And you can reach us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and DLive, on social media to leave your comments, to speak to us and tell us what you think is going on. And you'll see those comments as we go throughout the show. Today is a tough day, by the way, folks. And you can see that in part with what we were starting off with, talking about the things that are afflicting America, the things that are eating away at America. And there's a couple of things in particular. Now, obviously, we're happy to speak about whatever you want to speak about, because this is about your expression of free speech. But I do want to start off, and I want to start with something very important to me. Today, I learned, as we were preparing for the show, I just found out about a personal loss. A friend of mine, a deep and great friend of mine, Mr. Dan Polkorak, he passed away yesterday. It was rather sudden, and it shocked many of us. And I found out about this morning, and I'm still dealing with that. And I hope you will bear with me as I understand and try to understand that. Because Dan was a great friend, a great musician, a great thinker. He was a tyrant in the best of the ways to think about that. And for those who know him, they know exactly what that means. And I want to take a minute because it's important to talk about that, because it's important to talk about what took his life so quickly from us, that affected us all. Now, some people may recall, I've spoken with Dan before. He's been on the channel, and we were talking about a lot of things, and I'll explain what this is about, because my friend Dan, I want to play with you just a bit of a conversation I had with him in 2018 when we were talking about immigration, and something that most people wouldn't think of for a musician, a rock musician, that most people wouldn't think about. But he had this to say about something, and I thought it was great.
About our welfare as a nation. So do you think it's better that we could take a doctor from anywhere in the world,
right?
Or we can take a migrant farmer from El Salvador? Which one's going to help us more?
Do you really want the answer to this? Because I know the answer to this.
Yeah,
it's
I really
that
want the answer.
migrant farmer is going to help us more. We had fields rot after we stopped some of that immigration stuff. Because you want to know what? The average, quote unquote, American citizen is not going to go and pick fruit and vegetables, man. If you want to know,
that's not entirely wrong.
It's not wrong.
Yeah,
we didn't. We tried. We stopped those visas, and our fields went fallow.
I just wanted to play a little bit of that for you, because I want you to understand something that I think is important. My friend Dan is a deep thinker. He was a great mind. He was a great musician. We've played some of his music from his band, Adam Ate the Apple, on this program from time to time. He's worked on doing some intro music for us on this channel. He was a deep thinker, very concerned about his fellow American and those around the world. And he had a unique perspective, which I enjoyed being able to hear and to challenge me on the things that I thought about. And I want to be very clear that we lost Dan not because of any of the things you think of with rock stars or anything like that, but in fact, we lost Dan because of diabetes. It's one of the worst things, national diabetes. Dan had diabetes for many years, and he struggled with that. He was one of 32 million Americans that have been diagnosed with diabetes. Literally 1 in 10 Americans have that. 88 million adults, 1 in 3 have pre-diabetes. And this is a horrible, horrible thing, because there are literally it's the number 7 cause of death in the United States alone. That's in the United States, one of the preeminent nations in the world, a first world nation with first world medicine. And we know that in the world right now, somewhere around 422 million people, more than 422 million people in the world die from diabetes. We know that, are afflicted with diabetes. We know that 3.7 million people in 2019 died because of diabetes. And this is a big deal to me because this took away my friend. This took away a personal friend and genius in music and someone who I will miss dearly. And so I wanted to take this moment to talk to you about this and say, please get yourself checked out. Please take the chance to find out more about diabetes. Please seek help for that. Try to live with it as best you can. It's important because Dan was taken away from us far too young. He was taken away from us far too young and far too early. And there are far too many people in the world that we're losing because of things like diabetes. And it's unnecessary. It shouldn't happen. And one day I hope we can beat that and we can defeat that and we can take it away. Today hasn't been that day. It was too late for my friend, but it's not too late. We must continue that research. We must continue to help people. It is a silent killer. It takes people away far too young. So many people. My father was dealing with diabetes as well. And it affected him severely, put him in a wheelchair. So I understand the silent killer, and we should speak more about this, and we should be more aware of this. And I'm sorry to lose my friend. I'm sorry my friend is gone. And thank you, Lynn. Lynn is speaking with us right now, and she mentioned she's sorry to hear this, and I am too. And like I said, it's still a shock, and it's something that's surprising to us, and it's still new news to me and many of our friends, and we're still dealing with that. But I wanted to speak about that in this show. It is one of the things that are afflicting America. And it's not something that gets to the headlines a whole lot. It's not something that a lot of people speak about much. So I wanted to bring that up, and I hope, much like in this program when we talk about suicide prevention and domestic abuse and many of the things that are affecting us, depression, as we were speaking about last week, we need to speak about these things from time to time, even though it's not in the headlines every day. And I'm sorry that it throws me off, but the show must go on and I must continue. But I wanted to share that with you, and I hope for everyone who knew Dan, and for those who know someone who's afflicted with diabetes or were concerned about being afflicted with diabetes, please get yourself checked out. None of us want to see you go away before your time. Mavis mentions that diabetes is caused by the worst diet, first world diet. Human body hasn't evolved enough to deal with eating mass amounts or processing foods and the carbs. And that's one of the reasons. There's many problems with that. And a good diet, good exercise, it helps. Even before you can get it, and definitely if you've been afflicted with it. So I wanted that message to go out there because it is one of the things that are afflicting America. It's afflicting the world. First world nations, third world nations, it doesn't matter. It's something that can affect everyone at birth or even later in life, and we need to be aware of that. It's a silent killer. And it's one of several things that I want to be concerned with today, because it's not the only thing that's afflicting people throughout the world and in America. To talk about the politics of the day, let's talk about what else is afflicting America. We now know from the CDC there has been growing and growing concern about the heart inflammation and difficulties and reactions from COVID-19, in particular the mRNA vaccinations, in particular coming from Pfizer and from Moderna. And that is a big deal. They are getting worse. We're seeing more and more of this. We first started seeing this on May 27th, and we've seen even more updates about that recently, in fact, today. And it's a growing concern for those who are 16 and under, for young adults, teenagers who are getting these mRNA vaccinations. When we're not on this program to say that you can't get vaccinated or you should or should not get vaccinated, that is your personal choice. It is your right and your freedom to either get vaccinated or not. We're not going to tell you either way. What we are saying is that you need to be aware there's a lot going on. We've seen a lot of problems with these vaccinations, especially in the second doses that we've been seeing. And while Facebook and Twitter and the major news media don't like to tell you about these things, we want you to be aware. Speak to your doctor. If you are having an injection and you start having trouble breathing, you're feeling pressure on your chest, please go out and get to your medical advisor and have it checked out. Because we're seeing more and more complications. And this is getting worse and worse. It is growing. It is not shrinking. We're seeing more and more side effects. And much like with diabetes, this is a silent killer. It's something that's not getting reported a lot in the news. It's not something that's being talked about much by the national news media or by the government. And that's a problem, because we need to help people as soon as possible to raise awareness on not just on diabetes, not just on the vaccinations and the possible ramifications of them, but also, the suicide, all these things that are afflicting so many people. We need to be aware. We need to talk about these things, and we need the freedom, which I see the internet is not giving me this moment. Of course, I said the killer word. I talked about COVID, and of course, I see instantly the internet started reacting to that, the internet overlords. But we need to have these conversations. We need to have the freedom to have these conversations and say, you need to be aware of what's going on in our health, what's affecting us. And those things that are not popular still are important, whether it's diabetes or it's a reaction to the mRNA vaccinations. We need to speak about this so people can get help as soon as possible. That's what I believe. You may tell me, Mike, well, you're just wrong. That's not as important. And then I would ask you, what happens when you lose someone you love? It becomes important then. I'd rather no one ever has to have that moment and have to experience that loss if we can help it, if we can stop it, if there's anything that we can do. I think that's the important message. I think that's the important thing that we have to share with each other. I don't want anyone to have to wake up in a morning like I did and to lose someone they love and not know that there was something they could have done. That to know that there maybe, I don't know, there could have been a doctor's appointment, there could have been a checkup that could have stopped it. It's important. So I want to share that with you. I want to talk about that because it is important. And I want to hear what your thoughts are, not just on diabetes and how we can help our friends and ourselves with a good diet and with good food and good exercise to try and take care of that, but to just be aware of what's going on with vaccinations, to know how we're reacting to them and what effects they're having on each of us, whether we do or do not choose to have them. And I know the internet overlords hate when I speak about that, and who knows, this may be the last time that we have a show because we dare to say that there's evidence and information that's coming from the CDC that isn't what's being promoted. But this channel is about talking about the truth and talking about the issues that affect us all, not about what the media wants to promote, not what the internet overlords are trying to shove down our throat. And we need to have these conversations. And of course, we invite you, like you've seen with Lynn and Mavis, you are more than welcome to comment on Facebook, on Twitter, on DLive, on YouTube, and to share your thoughts. You're also able to call into the show at 607-242-1582 to let us know what your thoughts are on this or any subject. Because we want to hear what you think. We want to hear what you think about the vaccinations. What do you think about what's being said on the side effects? Is this affecting you? Is it stopping you from getting a vaccination? Are you more encouraged to get a vaccination because of your what's going on with COVID, what's going on with the vaccinations, and the demands of the vaccine passports, the second-class citizenship that's being affected by that? And is it something that's important to you? I want to hear your thoughts. Let's hear what you have to say, because too often the media and social media don't let you speak, but we will. So that's something I wanted to bring up, and it's one of, like we said, the silent killers, the afflictions that are affecting the United States and the world. But by no means is it the only thing that is afflicting the world, that is causing a problem. Because there's the G7. Now, a lot of people don't pay attention to this. They don't think about the G7. They don't think about what's happening when we see the first world nations get together and have a conversation about what's going to be happening in America, what's going to be happening in the world, how they plan to deal with things. But we need to talk about this because it's affecting what's going on in China and how China is interacting with the United States. It's a big deal. And we know that President Biden really isn't doing anything. There are 1 million people, the Uyghurs of China, who are in the middle of a genocide. They are being killed. They are being put into concentration camps, literally. This isn't a figurative statement. It's not something that's being said out of the allegory to the Germans in 1940. No, this is real. It is a real genocide. It's the same as the genocide in the Sudan that often gets not spoken about. We're talking about people right now under the Communist Party of China. They're being eliminated. And what is the United States doing? What are the greatest nations in this world? What are they saying at this meeting at the G7 when they're speaking specifically about this? And the answer is not a whole lot. According to, and yes, we're using Fox News, but it's a direct quote, when Bloomberg's reporter Jennifer Jacobs was speaking to President Biden about the G7 and what's going on, she asked him, quote, the final language of the G7 communique does have some mention of China, but I know it's not as tough as you and your team wanted it to be. Why isn't it as tough? There isn't very much action in it. That the Biden administration is not addressing the key concern of genocide. Why isn't America doing this? And that's a big question. Isn't America supposed to be leading the charge? Aren't the Democrats who want to talk to us about critical race theory, who want to talk to us about gender identity politics, aren't they that group? They're the ones who are telling us we have to pay attention to minorities. We have to pay attention to this group, that group. Why aren't we paying attention to the literal genocide of a group of people in China? Why aren't we speaking up as we scream about minorities here in our own nation and bend over backwards to try and demonize part of our country to promote another part of our country? In other words, we see from the far left, they want white people to, they want them to apologize for being born with their skin being white. And at the same time, they're promoting those who are black and saying, oh, well, we have to subjugate, we have to defer to those who have darker skin colors because, well, Isn't that the way to balance things? But yet those same groups, those same people are saying nothing. When we watch John Cena talk about China and apologize for merely mentioning Taiwan as a nation, we don't hear the outrage from John Cena, from the far left, from Kobe Bryant, not Kobe Bryant, the basketball stars, about saying, hey, stop genociding your own people. And what did the Biden administration have to say about this? A lot of people didn't talk about this. You haven't heard about this. What did they say? The answer was, as you know, the last time the G7 met, there was no mention of China. But this time, there is the mention of China. The G7 explicitly agreed to call out human rights abuses by the communist government and Hong Kong. And by the way, Hong Kong isn't promoting the genocide. That again is the Communist Party of China, the socialists of China. That isn't the democracy of Hong Kong, which is fighting to have the same freedoms that we see here in America. As we saw in 2019, as they were waving American flags, as their leaders in the Hong Kong government were being thrown into jail by the Chinese Communist government. That's a big deal. And so what does Biden have to say about this? I know it's going to sound somewhat prosaic, but I think that we're in a contest, not with China per se, but a contest with autocrats and autocratic governments around the world as to whether or not democracies can compete with them in the rapidly changing 21st century. Are you kidding me? Let's think, maybe it's me. Maybe you think I'm wrong. But when you hear him say that we're mentioning China, but we're not talking about the genocide that is going on, and we're not calling out the genocide specifically, and we're not saying, along with the world leaders, that China is wrong to commit genocide, that it is wrong to imprison as political prisoners the leaders of Hong Kong because they have a different idea, just because they're not communists, just because they're not socialists. What is going on? Why can't we say this? Why is our leadership so afraid to say, don't do this? To say to China, if you are committing genocide, we, the United States, don't want to deal with you, that we will impose economic sanctions because we don't agree with that. The same way that we put in economic sanctions against the South African government back in the 80s because of apartheid. The same kind of sanctions we put against the Sudan because of the genocide happening there. I don't know, is it me, or is that too much to ask for? Is that too difficult of an idea to have to say, hey, we don't agree that the G7, which would be the EU, Europe, and also Britain and Canada and the United States, that we can come together and say, we will punish you. I mean, am I saying, is this too much? Is this too much to ask for, to say, hey, we oppose genocide? Because the answer that we're hearing from the Biden administration at the G7 is, yes, it is too much to ask for. That is a bridge too far. And I think that's insane. Dow mentions there definitely is a double standard. There should be a mass censure of the CCP. The CCP is the socialist government or the communist government of China. And you know what, Dow? I agree with you. And thank you for joining us here on the show. We need to call this out. We need to say this is wrong. And again, this is one of the silent killers affecting the world. This is one of the afflictions of the world, that we have leaders who are afraid to address the elephant in the room. Now, it's not the same thing as diabetes. It's not the same thing as COVID vaccines, but it is no less deadly and no less important. And we have the very same people who are running our government, these far left politicians and these far left groups that are telling us we have to bend the knee, we have to bend over backwards to punish ourselves for having ideas that they don't like, and those very same ideas that they don't like, they are unwilling to apply to China. And I got to ask you folks, why? What is it that China is offering that is so important? Is it a love of socialism? And I really want to hear from someone on the far left to explain this to me. Because it's not the average Democrat. I know many Democrats. I know many moderates. They don't agree with this. They don't think this is right. And I don't think anyone in the world really thinks this is right. And we have to ask the question, so why is it happening? Why are we letting these leaders do this? Especially in America, where they answer to us. More than any other nation in the world, the United States government, Joe Biden answers to the people. He doesn't dictate to us. It's not like the parliament where there is an interplay and that there's a royal family. No, the United States, he answers to us. It is a fundamental of our Constitution. So does every member of Congress, whether it's in the House of Representatives or it's in the Senate. They answer to us. So why are we not forcing them to say, speak up and denounce this genocide, these horrific actions by China? And the answer that we're getting instead, that I can see and I will show you, and I'm going to get to your comment in 1 second, Dale, is that the G7 is saying very clearly that it's not one of the biggest issues that they want to deal with. According to the BBC, the G7 is being requested that their big concern at the G7 is about climate change, not about the genocide in China, not about, most things. They're worried about climate change. And they're worried about getting $100 billion spent around the world that no one is willing to spend, that no one is willing to give out. And as the BBC is noting, the G7 must announce real finance through grants and stop turning a blind eye while the world's poorest and most marginalized are hit the hardest. This is what they're worried about. They're worried about climate change. They're worried about giving money to third world nations. Really? That's the biggest issue right now? The biggest issue is climate change. Something that we don't have a consensus on, that quite honestly, like it has happened so many times, if the earth is getting warmer or colder, we don't know because we don't have evidence to be clear on that. Either way, there's nothing that man can do about that. The earth has done it at least 27 times before, and they are more concerned about trying to change something that they don't know how to change, and they're letting genocide happen. I think there's a mix of priorities here. But Dow mentions, honestly, I've never understood why American government has never promoted Taiwan's legitimacy and allow Hong Kong to either be autonomous or join Taiwan. And not allow, poor choice of words, I mean, bring massive support to Hong Kong. I don't understand why the United States, why they're afraid, they're terrified. If we listen to the far left, again, the very group who has been adamant that they support and they represent the minorities of the world, that they want to do the best as they export the BLM movement, as they export critical race theory, as they export this radical ideology that people should be punished for the color of their skin. These same people are unwilling to even mention that there's a problem going on. I mean, where was the last time you heard Hollywood or any of the entertainers that fill the airwaves, the Kardashians, LeBron James, basketball? When have you last heard any of them say, hey, genocide is bad, communism is hurting people, destroying the ability to have, for Hong Kong to be free is a danger? When was the last time you heard that? I mean, has anyone heard them say that? because I don't think you have. And I know that Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, they hate when we mention these things. They make problems for the channel and the signal, and they threaten to silence people, to cut them off completely, to stop any of the shows just for mentioning so many of these things. Now, we're going to mention it on this show because it is important and it is an affliction. But I have to tell you, to see what's going on right now is ridiculous. They're talking about reducing climate change, the greenhouse gases in the world. And let me ask you something. Did you know that the United States leads the world in reduction of greenhouse gases? That we have reduced more greenhouse gases than all of Europe and Britain combined. That we have reduced the greenhouse gases in the United States 600% more than the next closest nation, which would be Great Britain. And China, by itself, every year has increased the net greenhouse gases in the world. They have created more greenhouse or climate change pollution than anywhere else on the planet. Every year, even as we have reduced, they have matched that and increased and brought in more. So what's going on? Dow mentions, I had a family member that used to do the milk run over the hump from India into China during World War II, fighting against the Imperial Japan, only to watch as Mao destroyed any progress of liberation. Mao, Chairman Mao, in his Red Book, which killed more people, actually, socialism has killed more people in the world than anything that we have ever seen. They've killed more people. Socialism between just the Soviet Union and China killed something like 200 million people. More than all the wars that have ever existed. More than and the Black Plague. Nothing has killed as many people as socialism. And yet, we're worried about climate change. We're worried about getting on their bad side, about the economic trade that we are doing with China. Really? That's what we're hearing from Joe Biden. The reason why the G7, when they met, and they were unwilling to say anything to China about the genocide and the restrictions of freedom, was because they're worried about the economics. I mean, does that make sense to anyone? Does that seem like a fair trade to you? And if you happen to be one of those who believe in climate and that the world is going to end, according to AOC, in the next, 7, 8 years now? If you think that, like Greta Thunberg, that we're about to be at the point of no return and our world is going to die unless we change everything, then why are they not imposing sanctions against China? Why are we not seeing the G7 come together and say, not only are they going to give $100 billion to third world nations, but we're going to pay for that by putting sanctions and tariffs on China until they make a change? I mean, does that sound fair? Does that not sound fair for those who believe in climate change, global warming or global cooling or whatever is the latest fad at this moment in this process that's been talked about since the 1960s and has never been proven correct? Not one theory of global warming has been correct at this moment. Then, assuming that it's still correct and it's still true, why aren't we punishing China? And if you have an answer for this, please, you can call into the show at 607-242-1582. If you think I am misunderstanding, if you think this conversation is wrong, please call in. Please leave us a statement here on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Let us know what you think about this, but I think this is important. Because we're going to get rid of, if we keep going down this path, part of what the G7 was talking about was getting rid of coal. that their answer is not just to give billions of dollars to third world nations, but they're going to get rid of our ability to make power. They want to get rid of coal. President, again, from the BBC, President Biden talked up the end of coal power generation in America with no details of a date or how he could get the legislation through Congress. Now, you may wonder something about that, and it's important because you may not have heard about this. Joe Biden wants to get rid of coal power. Now, if you're looking at this, you may say, well, that's a great thing because that means coal power is dirty. We got to get rid of it, just like we need to get rid of oil. Okay, what's going to replace it? Because China has made the decision that nothing replaces it, and they're making more coal power plants every year. Whether or not the United States gets rid of all of our coal, or all of our coal power, China's building more because they think it's efficient. And we are, by the way, and we've made all of our coal power plants more clean. And so we have to ask the question, what are we going to do if we don't have coal power? Dal has a comment. The policy of attempting to tempt communism into tempering their ideology and willingly performing self-extinction of the party through showing the wonders of investment and economic growth failed. We need to do something. I don't understand this, guys, because you tell me. Am I misunderstanding? Because I don't think you're hearing this about the G7. I don't think people are addressing what this really means. Not only are we willing to permit genocide, which we're seeing, not only are we willing to allow Hong Kong, people who are looking for democracy, who are asking for freedom, not even, they're hoping and praying for the same kind of freedoms that we see in Great Britain, that we see in Germany, that we see in France, Japan, and especially in the United States. They're begging for that freedom. And we are ignoring them. And instead, we are putting up the message that, well, we have to be worried about global warming, not genocide, not freedom. We have to worry about global warming. And to get that global warming, we're going to punish the very countries that are actually making a difference, that are actually reducing their greenhouse gases, which is led by the United States, followed by Great Britain, followed by the Europe, the European Union. The people who are actually doing the very key parts, we want to punish them. But when it comes to Russia, we see the Biden administration opened up a pipeline. They're funding the Russian pipeline for more oil. Shut down the United States pipeline, the XL pipeline, endangering and putting more pressure on our relationship with Canada, causing 11,000 Americans immediately to lose their jobs and countless thousands of other Americans to lose their jobs because of those 11,000 who lost their jobs. Because it's global warming. We have to fight global warming. Meanwhile, we're enabling Russia to be able to have an oil pipeline to increase their use of greenhouse gases and to enable, and we're ignoring China as they continue to pump out more. Tell me, how does this make sense? Dow mentions that, Lee. Hey, Lee, it's good to see you. And Lee says the same reason that Ford, GM, Coke were allowed to keep their assets from Germany, German branches, that were all due to the 1940s Germans. Dow mentions China will burn coal until they make the jump to atomic power. Well, that may be one of the answers. Why aren't we using more nuclear power? In fact, if you look at the latest, The World of Humans, which came from Michael Moore. He was the producer. The far left of far left. Michael Moore produced a documentary showing us that the green energy movement, the renewable energy movement doesn't work. It doesn't work. It has never worked, and it's not ready to work now. Even as Biden is quietly, very, very quietly, because you have not seen in the major news media, please tell me if I'm wrong, you have not seen in the major news media that Joe Biden says coal, that he's getting rid of coal. Just in the same way that he didn't tell anyone he was going to get rid of the XL pipeline. He just did it and hurt the American economy, hurt the American people. He just did it to satisfy the far left. And here we are, we're seeing him about to get rid of coal, something that even Britain, the BBC, is noting they have no idea how he's going to do this. It can't get through Congress, and he has no time frame on this, but he's promising he's going to get rid of coal. And no one has any idea what's going to replace the coal. That's the part that's not mentioned in the BBC article. What replaces the coal? Solar? It doesn't work. Wind? It doesn't work. Geothermal? There is no effective renewable energy source that exists at this time and foreseeably will not exist for the next 30, 50 years. There's a comment here. Lee mentioned that people don't care about Chinese genocide and the G7 won't do anything because they might have to pay more for their iPhone or other crap that they buy at Walmart. Dow mentions that while America pursued atomic power that could create weaponized material, the communist government of China took their branches of study and ran with it. The study of thorium and light molten salt reactors are more advanced. I don't doubt that China has better capabilities of nuclear power, but they're using coal power massively. And you're right, Lee. You are absolutely right, Lee, that the Chinese don't care. And the G7 they're just, I don't even know what the word is, helpless, willfully ignorant, dangerously ineffective, because they're focused on the wrong thing, and they're ineffective in the thing that they are focused on, in my opinion. Now, you can tell me, Mike, well, you're completely wrong. You just don't understand the situation. And I invite you to tell me how I am wrong. But we are seeing, as we see from BBC News, as we're seeing from Fox News, we're being told that the G7 is completely ineffective. We are being told by Joe Biden, in his own words, that he has no idea how to fix the problem, and in fact is looking to make part of the problem worse. And that is an affliction that is affecting the world. That is the G7. It is an affliction. It is hurting the world because not only are they focused on the wrong things, in my opinion, they are ineffective in the things they are focused on. And you can tell me that you think I'm absolutely wrong, and I'm happy to hear that. I just want to hear why. Dow mentions the G7 is willfully incompetent. And I agree. And I think that's the worst thing. I don't care what form of government you have. Ineffective and inefficient government is the worst. We see that in the United States all the time. Look at Congress. Whenever we see a government, whether it's at the local, state, or federal level, when we see one-party rule, like we see in New York State, where Democrats, and in particular the hyper-partisan, fractional, the splinter group of the progressive movement, they control New York State. Emperor Cuomo has been a great example of their leadership. Not just AOC, but we see that in the New York State legislature, whether it's the Assembly or the State Senate, we see nothing getting done that is actually effective. They're trying to stop you and I from being able to have a bulletproof vest to protect ourselves from violence. They're looking to defund the police. Even as we see crime, and more importantly, violent crime, is skyrocketing. These are facts. It cannot be disputed. The numbers are in front of us And we're seeing this, that they are leading us. We're seeing the debt for New York State increase. You know, the federal government bailed out the Cuomo administration, $12 billion. And the Cuomo administration turned around and increased spending by an extra $2 billion. And we're looking at, for this same year, the first year after the bailout, where that we were made flat, we're going to look at $8 billion in debt instantly. They didn't learn their lesson. They turned around and decided they're going to spend more. And what are they spending it on? On illegal aliens. Talk about inefficient and ineffective. It's the wrong thing to do. That's not creating more business. That's not saving the businesses that we have seen close over and over. That's not stopping the eviction crisis with 12 million people in the United States that are looking to be evicted or lose their homes to mortgages. That's not changing the fact that we are seeing homeowners that are unable to keep their homes. That's not stopping what we're seeing right now. You know what? You know what this is? Well, you can't really see it well because of the lighting. You know what I got here? I received on June 6th a letter from a business that is asking to buy my home. You know what? I'm not the only one who got this. My entire neighborhood, every homeowner in my neighborhood, in my region of the southern tier, received that letter because they know people are hurting, because we're watching signs pop up left and right saying that that people are unable to pay their mortgages. How is that connected? We see ineffective government. We see ineffective rule. We see a focus on the wrong things that are not benefiting anyone. And the G7 seems to be like a really big version of what we're seeing in Congress. That they don't know what they're looking at, that they're focused on this fraction, this splinter idea, and hiding from the real problem. And that affliction is getting worse, I think. We see Lee mentions the left knows the problems and they have all these wonderful solutions. They never bother with the brainstorming on how to get from one to the other, though. And let me say, Lee, I think you're mostly right, but the left seems to love to have a problem. You know, race relations, the environment, income inequality. They have all these problems they want to point out, but they have zero solutions. They don't know how to fix any of them. You have yet to hear them say anything that's a fix. Again, I will point to, and we've talked about this in the first quarter of this year, we spoke on this channel about what's going to happen to there's 12 million people, actually more at this moment, but in January, there were 12 million people who were facing eviction. 12 million. And we heard from the government, both on the state and federal levels, the answer is, well, no one can get evicted, no one can lose their home from a mortgage until later in the year. They pushed it down the line. That's all they did. They were supposed to answer the problem in January. They decided to move it to March, and then they moved it to September. They have no idea how to fix this. But yet they're telling us it's a problem. They're telling us that we have a problem with race in this nation. And their answer for that, they don't have one. They're just picking on people and saying, well, you know what? We have a problem with race. Let's make it worse by saying that if you're born a certain color, well, you are a problem and you're evil. That's not a solution. That's creating more of a problem. That's ineffective and inefficient. That's critical race theory. We have them worried about telling us that the worst thing possible, the absolute danger to our nation and to ourselves is climate change. That the world is going to end in the next 8 years. And they're telling us that at the same time that China is polluting more than ever before every year. India is right behind them. And their answer, and their part of the problem is they're saying, well, we'll just get rid of the coal. We'll get rid of the pipelines. We'll pay for other pipelines in other parts of the world, but we'll just take away ours. which doesn't help the American people and doesn't fix the problem. It doesn't make renewable energy any better. And no one wants to talk about it. Well, none of the major news media wants to talk about it. Let me see. Lee mentioned that, was it a company in Central Square in New York? They have been sending them, no. The letter I received, which is to buy my property, is from a company called West Realty Solutions. And they've been, so thank you for pointing out, Lee, that this is not something that's just limited to my region. So it's in Central Square, New York. We're seeing across the country that homeowners are getting these letters because they know that people are desperate right now, that they can't pay, and there is no solution coming from the government at this moment to help people to save and keep their homes or to keep their apartments. It's a problem. It's ineffective government at every level, even on the international level, because we're more worried about global warming. And we have our governments on the local level, on the national level saying, well, we have to put up windmills. Doesn't matter if you put up windmills if people don't have a place to live. I mean, does that not make sense? And if you're telling me the problem is, well, you won't be able to breathe because the air is going to be bad because of greenhouse gases and global warming, then tell me, why aren't we picking on China and forcing them through economic sanctions and saying, we're not going to buy your stuff, and the stuff we do buy, we're going to charge you more. You're going to pay a tax on that to help fund cleaning the rest of the world until they join with everyone else. Is this not an affliction of inaction, an affliction of ineffectiveness? Dow mentions that cheaply produced energy would provide a massive leap forward in human achievement. That would also mean unmanageable population explosions, scares the elites to death, so they fight it. Look, I'm all for cheap energy. And if we really want cheap energy and we want it to be clean, the most effective answer is nuclear energy. You don't have to believe me. Look at Michael Moore. Look at his documentary. What was it? The Planet of Humans. Look at his documentary. Look at the far left's answer over and over again. The single most effective way to clean the planet and to provide cheap power is nuclear energy. And you will never hear Joe Biden, you will never hear the G7 say, well, let's create more nuclear power plants. You're not hearing them say it because they don't know what they're doing. They're ineffective. They are an affliction because of their ineptitude, in my opinion. And again, this channel is about free of speech. You can call in at 607-242-1582. The phone is on, and you can call in and tell me you think I'm wrong. If I'm misunderstanding something, you can leave us a text like you're seeing Lee and Mavis and Dow and Lynn. You can leave us a comment and say, hey, I think you're wrong. You misunderstand. But this is a big deal. And it's as big a deal as when we're seeing with diabetes, that we're seeing with depression, like we were talking about last week, like the increase in domestic abuse, like the increase in suicide, in the increase in violence. I was talking to a member of law enforcement in my local region, and they were telling me about how there are not exponential, but significant increases in all these problems because we're focused on the wrong thing. The affliction that has come from top down has been that we're going to focus on not the biggest problem. Because I tell you what, the biggest problem isn't climate change. Not while we're watching violence increase by 40, 60, in some places 600%. There's your problem. There's your immediate problem. And the answer isn't, let me take away the guns. Because That's not the answer. It's never been the answer. For 5 decades, we have seen that isn't the answer. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Dow mentions that energy production through atomic power is a fascinating subject, huge amounts of information, just as much propaganda and misinformation that creates policy prohibiting its use. Because we see that again, and he goes on to say that atomic power also presents a problem to legacy energy companies. Maybe. Maybe the various oil and gas companies, they would have a problem. But I'm less worried about them than I am about everything else. What just happened? Excuse me, folks. Oh, wow. It looks like I'm getting shut down. By the way, anyone who's watching this on YouTube, anyone who's watching this on Facebook, I just saw something that came across my system as if it was like it's being limited, that people aren't able to see this. Please do let me know if you are. But I think these are big afflictions. I think these are big problems. And I think that it's not just the energy companies, it's our approach. We could deal with energy companies. I don't care about the greed of this company, that company. All companies have greed. I think that if we change the way we approach this, we can get to a much better position. Because it's not only that. The problem isn't just what we're seeing with energy. Oh, Dow mentions we're still up. Okay, thank you. Because it was showing me for a moment there that we were down. And I know that based on what we were talking about earlier at the beginning of the show, talking about diabetes, talking about the mRNA vaccines, that they may have shut us down. And the fact of what I'm talking about right now, they may shut it down. But the problem isn't just this. And when I'm talking about the afflictions that are affecting us all, they go far, far beyond just that. Right now, we know that Israel just changed its ruling government. Benjamin Netanyahu is no longer going to be the prime minister of Israel. And we know that the United States has had a cold, if not bad, relationship under the Obama administration and so far under the Biden administration with Israel, our only ally in the Middle East, the only democracy in the Middle East. And even if people don't like the Middle East, even if you don't like Israel, it is a fact that our only friend in the Middle East is Israel. And the only democracy in the Middle East is Israel. And it is the most free nation in the Middle East. That is a fact. So our relationship with them is very important. But we see that Israel doesn't have a great position with the United States. And many people said, well, that's because of Benjamin Netanyahu. But the fact is, what we see now is the new person taking over, which is, and I forget his name, excuse me, Naftali Bennett. Naftali Bennett has stated very clearly, quote, Israel will not allow Iran to arm itself with nuclear weapons. Israel will not be a party to the agreement and will continue to preserve full freedom of action. There you go. Now, why is this a big deal? Because it made it very clear that we have an affliction on our international policy, and it's not Benjamin Netanyahu. It's, again, the Biden administration, the goals of pandering to the far left in creating the Iran nuclear deal and allowing Iran to be able to benefit both by giving them money to fund global terror and also to allow them to expand the ability to create rockets and missiles that will destroy Israel and potentially reach the United States, which Iran has said is their ultimate goal. Because Iran has said and is saying right this minute on Twitter, on Facebook, they are saying right now they want to kill everyone in America. That's not made up. Look it up for yourself. It has not changed their opinion since the 1970s. They have not changed their opinion since 1977. They want to kill America. Whether you're a liberal, whether you're a socialist, whether you're part of the Democratic Socialists of America, a libertarian, a conservative, a Republican, it doesn't matter. They want you dead because you believe in freedom. And we have the Biden administration that wants to give that government, Iran, more money to fund their ability to try and kill our friends in Israel and the United States. Does that make sense to you? Let me go back. Dow mentions that the biggest problem is government is not willing to get out of the way. We are now subject to vast middle managers that want to micromanage every aspect of everyone else's existence, not their own. Perhaps that's one of the bigger problems, that we're watching individuals like AOC, Nancy Pelosi, Kirsten Gillibrand, Ilhan Omar, the Biden administration, Kamala Harris, that they have their only plans are, let's try to control what you do. It is effectively the same thing that we're seeing with China and how it's dealing with Hong Kong. Perhaps you don't see it, but let me make it clear. China arrests and has cracked down and has put, for the last 3-4 years now, 3 years, they have been circling Hong Kong with tanks. They have been arresting the leadership of Hong Kong. They have been imprisoning people and throwing them into gulags for asking for the right to be able to get to the internet like I am right now and to have a conversation like you are having with me right now, like the comments that we are seeing on this show. And that is a problem. And that's what we're seeing now. Oh, the government's saying, well, you know what? You can't speak about certain things. And we don't care about our friends and our allies. That we're going to punish our friends and our allies. And that may take the form of them trying to cause more economic problems by imposing the green movement and the renewable energy movement and the climate change issue, costing them billions, if not trillions of dollars and hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs, destroying their economies, destroying the livelihoods and the future of our friends and allies as well as ourselves, and at the same time empowering our enemies and nations that would see us all die, like Russia, by giving them more oil, and Iran by giving them our money so that they can fund global terror, just like they did in 2016 in the Obama administration, as stated by then Secretary John Kerry, the very same man who is now in charge of the G7 movement to try and get global warming, the green movement done, climate change in the United States. That terrifies me. Now, so I don't know. It terrifies me because this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. This is an affliction. It's an affliction of the mind. It's counterproductive and counterintuitive. And we know that this is a problem because even our best allies are saying this makes no sense. Whether it's the G7 saying, well, it doesn't make sense why we don't attack China. Whether it's Israel that's saying, even without Netanyahu, that they are saying, you can't give nuclear weapons to Iran. You can't give money through the Iran nuclear deal, 2.0, to give them more money to fund global terror. That these are horrible ideas. It's not just Netanyahu. It's Biden administration is going to have the same problem with the Bennett administration of Israel as he's having or had with Netanyahu under the Obama and the Biden administrations. because the root problem is still the same problem. We're doing something stupid that doesn't make sense, that is counterproductive, it is ineffective, it is inefficient, it is an affliction on our nation that affects the globe. And perhaps you think I'm wrong. And for those who think I am wrong, as well as those who think I'm right, please do me a favor, just tell me. You can type it in on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive, on the social media, as long as the internet overlords are allowing, or call into the show at 607-242-1582. Tell us what you think, because I want you to be able to exercise free speech. And I am speaking to everyone in the world when I say this. I'm speaking to our friends in Great Britain across the pond. I'm talking to people in Germany. I'm talking to those in France, in Canada, in Mexico, in Peru. I'm talking to people in Japan. This show has an international audience. I know people are watching this. I even know that people are watching this in China. And that means that they're seeing it illegally. God bless them. I thank them for watching this, whether it's in Hong Kong or whether it's in the mainland China. Thank God. We appreciate this. But this is about freedom, and this is about being able to speak. And as long as the internet overlords allow us to be on, we are going to speak up. And even if they don't, we will find a way to continue to celebrate free speech and give you the opportunity to speak. That's what this show every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. is here for. That's why we thank you when you subscribe, to help us expand and to let other people know that their voice is valuable, that they get to speak out, that they get to have ideas, just like my good friend and my very missed friend, Dan Pokorak, while he was alive, he spoke on this program too, because you don't have to be a politician to be able to speak up and to try and correct the problems that we see that are happening right now. Excuse me a second. And I don't care if you're on the left or the right on this, because it doesn't matter. The problem is exactly the same. And even if you think, well, the left, if you think socialism is the answer, I point to, look at China right now. And I'll tell you, it's not. Maybe you want to look at Russia. Socialism is not the answer. Look at Venezuela. It's not the answer. Look at the immigration crisis. It's not the answer. We have more people coming from nations that have socialist governments than from anywhere else combined. They're the biggest source. Last that I had checked the figures, the biggest source of influx are from people coming from countries that are more socialist than not. Because it doesn't work. And yet we see our leaders trying to take on these ideals from these socialist nations. Dow mentions that the diversity of ideas and propagation of good ideas are the strength of humanity. And I think it's true. Necessity is the mother of invention, except when you kill that invention, when you deprive people of being able to innovate, to experiment, to try. You know, I had someone once tell me, Mike, you don't understand what some of the things you say, because it doesn't make sense. You're saying, as an example, you're saying that the green energy movement is useless. You're saying that renewable energy is a dumb idea. But then you say something like, well, we need innovation. We need to promote different ideas. Well, let me explain that, because I think people don't, those same people who are complaining, and they tend to be on the left, but they're not exclusively there. I want to explain that it's not in two separate things. I'm saying that green energy as it exists right now, and as it has been projected to be for the next 30 to 50 years, doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, it makes no sense for us to try and pander to the public and say that we have the answer, that we're going to just switch everything from what we have right now to that green energy when we can't do it, when it doesn't work, when that actually hurts us more than it helps us. What I want them to do is keep researching, try and fix the problem. We've been working on making solar energy effective for 70 years. Literally 70 years. We have been working on solar energy. It still isn't effective. Take another 30 years, get it effective, then tell me that you want to get rid of coal. Then tell me you want to shut down the XL pipeline. Then tell me that you want to move away from carbon-based fuel. Because then it makes sense. Then you have an argument. But if you don't do that first, if you don't do the innovation first, if you don't strive to see diversity and say, well, maybe we should do more than just switch from, shut down our coal and then go to wind power, which doesn't work, perhaps maybe we should, keep doing the innovation. Maybe we should diversify and have some more nuclear power plants. Maybe we should stop this affliction of thinking that the answer is pandering to a small group of individuals. Because every time we pander to these small groups of individuals, whether it's on the local level, whether it's on the state level, whether it's on the federal level, whether it's on the international level, we have always seen that fail every single time. Look at the local level. When we see the local political parties in my region, Southern Tier, when people stopped paying attention, when they let those elected officials, the leaders of the various political parties, let them have 100% control, we watch this community fall apart. That's on the left and that is on the right. Whether we're talking about the Democratic Party or we're talking about the Republican Party, I will tell you that on the local level, in the Southern Tier of New York, they have failed. And they have failed because people stopped innovating, stopped saying, stopped asking for diversity, stopped trying to find ways to improve. And those leaders have used their power, their inefficiency, to make more of a problem in the local community, which is why businesses are failing, why people are moving away, why we see the government spending and wasting more and more money and taxes going up. That's left and right. And I will call them out. I don't care that I'm a Republican. I'll call out the right. And they'll be pissed at me again. I could care less. And we're seeing this at the state level. We're seeing this at the federal level. Let me mention something else that I think is an affliction that is affecting us today. And that is talking about what's going on with immigration. Because again, immigration is an affliction. It is a problem for our nation. It is a problem for the world because it is affecting us all negatively. And so one of the things to think about there is what we're seeing with Guatemala and with Mexico. And as you may recall, Kamala Harris recently went down to Guatemala to tell the Guatemalans and to tell the Mexicans, don't come to America. That was the big thing. Don't come to America. What was it that she said? Don't go to America. Don't come to America. According to the BBC and many other news sources, that the U.S. border with Mexico, it's being invaded by 178,000 illegal immigrants. Please stop using the undocumented migrants. They are not migrants. They're not migrating to the United States. They're trying to invade the United States, quite honestly. They're not undocumented. They don't have any legal right to be in the United States. They are illegal and they are alien to the United States. The legal term is illegal alien. To use terms like undocumented migrants is to try and lie to people, to soft pedal this, to make it sound better than it is, because it's not good. this is a problem. And we're watching, and we're watching that our elected officials, in particular Kamala Harris, is trying to brush this aside and make us think that this is simple. The answer is we'll just tell you, don't come. They're going to, even as we have children packed like sardines, even as we know that they are even more coming to the United States, that we see that the Guatemalan president is highlighting the fact that the Biden administration is encouraging more illegal immigration into the United States year after year, and month after month, as a matter of fact, at this point, that they are destroying their inefficiency is the affliction of the United States, because that's causing people to commit child abuse, sending children by themselves across the border to run a 1,000-mile trek with sex abusers and with drug gangs and being left in the middle of deserts. And Kamala Harris, her answer to that is just don't come. Even as we hear the Biden administration say, well, we're not going to close the border, and that everyone who shows up at our border, we're going to let into the United States. Even as we find out, as was told to us in Tennessee, that in the middle of the night, the Biden administration is shipping kids from the border into other parts of the United States without telling anyone. Even as Kamala Harris won't go to the border and let you see what's going on, because when she does go to the border, what we see and what we know from everyone who has been at the border, like in Donna, Texas, we see kids packed like sardines. That these are the cages that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez once threatened the Trump administration about, that exist right now under the Biden administration, and they're afraid to say a word. They won't even tell you about it. And their answer is, just don't come. And we're going to pay the Guatemalan government $310 million, $310 million to the government of Guatemala. Do you really think that's an effective answer? Because I can tell you that according to the New York Post and the people of Guatemala, their answer is, Kamala, Trump won. That's their signs. They're saying, Kamala, go home to mind her own business. They're telling you right now, the answer isn't, we're just going to throw more money at it. And by the way, I forgot to show you the image here. So these are the photos from Guatemala that says, Kamala, go home. Kamala, mind your own business. Kamala, Trump won. These are this is Guatemalan nationals. This is in the nation of Guatemala, according to the New York Post on June 7th. And you're not hearing this in the news. You're not hearing this in the major news media. The major news media didn't tell you that the answer, as Kamala Harris is there live telling people, just don't come to the American border, they're telling her, get out of here. You have no idea what you're talking about. As she's promising the Guatemalan government and Central America $310 million, it's doing nothing. Because we all know that's not the problem. The money, we already spend $150 million a year giving money to the nation of Guatemala. We're going to give $310 million on top of that. Why is that going to stop the average person who's trying to make this 1,000-mile trek when they're told the key to having a better life, even as a second-class citizen, is to come into the United States? And if you make it, the Biden administration is going to open the floodgates. They will move you around in the middle of the night, hiding you from the public and the press to make sure that you can infiltrate the nation across the states and make sure that you get to stay in America, even if you have COVID. Even if you have COVID. These are facts. So when they tell you, just don't come, they're lying to you. Okay, I missed a couple of comments here. Dow mentions that this is societal stagnation and that he loved seeing Kamala meet in Guatemala with banners telling her to mind her own business and that the election results were questionable. And I think it's important because, again, it's not just the affliction is the inefficiency of government. The affliction is that we are watching world leaders that are so disconnected from the truth, that are so disconnected from the American people and from the people of the world, that they look at you when they are asked questions and they don't even know what's going on and they don't know how to answer anything and they can't help but lie unconsciously. And if you think I'm wrong, here goes NBC News. This isn't Fox News. This isn't the far right. This isn't the conservative view. This is NBC, part of the far left. And this is their conversation with Kamala Harris this week. And this is what was being said.
Will it take some time? Yes.
There's one other topic I wanted to talk to you about, but let me just quickly put a button.
Okay.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I'm here in Guatemala today. At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making. I'm not discounting the importance of the border.
Well, I'm
Okay, there it is. And I want you to, did you see that? And I played it to make sure that it was in full context so that you get to hear the entire question and you got to see her entire answer. Because I want to make sure it's clear. This woman was just lying to your face. She is lost, she is ineffective and inefficient, and she is belittling you. Because she thinks the American people are too dumb to understand what she's just done. That she just told you it doesn't matter. Her answer was she doesn't understand the importance of what she was just asked. She doesn't get it. Why should she go to the border? Why should she actually have to see the very same children that a year and a half ago, she was screaming at the Trump administration. She was screaming at the top of her lungs about the fact that we have children in cages and immigration was a problem. We now have a 600% worse problem with immigration in the United States, which is having a negative impact on many countries. And at the time that she's saying that, her answer is, well, I don't see why it's a big deal. What does it matter? To quote, the infamous Hillary Clinton, what difference does it make? This is her point of view. And you just heard her say that. She looked at you and said, well, she didn't go to Europe. The United States border is not with Europe. I mean, I think no matter how bad you are with geography, if you've ever seen a globe, if you've ever seen a map of the United States, there is no border with Europe. There is an ocean between the United States and Europe. When we get told about the colonists, they crossed the ocean to get to America from Europe. So either Kamala Harris is insanely stupid or she knowingly is lying. She's fudging. She's making it up. And she's telling you that it's not important to her. Her trip to Guatemala wasn't important. It wasn't meant to be effective. Because if it was meant to be effective, she would go to the United States border that she had to pass by to get to Guatemala in the first place. When she went to Mexico after going to Guatemala and came back to the United States, she had to pass the U.S. border again. She can't say she couldn't stop. And she's never been there. NBC News told you by themselves directly that she's never been there. And her answer is, well, I haven't been to Europe. What does that have to do with the problem at hand? How does that fix the problem at hand? We don't have a problem with Europeans on our border. They can't be. We have a problem with people from Guatemala being at our border. That's why she went to Guatemala. So there is a problem there, and she won't go see the problem? Is it because they're still busy trying to take all those kids out of the cages and try and spread them across the United States with COVID so that they can hide it from you, so that when they allow actual news media who have been banned from the border, the news media is banned, they are denying the First Amendment rights of the press. They are denying freedom of speech, and they don't want you to go down there until after they have made it look good. That is an ineffective, inefficient government, and that is a problem. A couple of comments here. Ann mentions 4 years is a long time for the Biden administration and the left-wing media agenda to cause massive damage to our country. Thanks for your commentary. Thank you. We appreciate it, Ann. A much needed voice. We need people to stand up. And I thank you, Ann. And yes, I agree. We do need more people to stand up. It is very important. Vic mentions that you can't go to the border if you're Kamala. She might be recognized by her supporters in MS-13. And how embarrassing would that be on film? I can't answer that. Perhaps what I can say is that this is another example of the affliction against the United States. This is affliction against the world. This is inefficiency. This is ineffectiveness. This is a power grab. This is a problem. We're focused on the wrong thing. Oh, we have to give money to Central America and South America. We already do that. We have to help their governments. We already try to do that. And by the way, if we can't fix unemployment in the United States, we're not going to fix the unemployment in South America or Central America. If we can't fix our problems, how are we going to fix someone else's problem? We can't. And if we don't know how to fix our problem, then we're not doing anything to benefit them. That is the obvious truth of the situation. And yet she's down there, and when she has to confront the fact that, well, part of the problem is the border, and to understand how to fix the problem, you have to go to the border. And her response is, I haven't been to Europe. How is that not insulting? How is that not insulting to the American people? How is that not screaming to every member of the G7? How is that not screaming to every member of a government in the world? How is that not telling Russia and China and North Korea and Iran that the United States is ineffective, inefficient, and led by idiots? Now, you may disagree with me. You may say, no, Kamala's great. She's brilliant because she's black, which has nothing to do with whether or not she's smart. Or that she's a woman, which has nothing to do with whether or not she's smart. I don't care about that. Don't tell me that she's a woman. Don't tell me that she's a person of color. I could care less. Because those are an intrinsic of intelligence. They're not character. That's just a birthright. You can tell me that she's tall, and it would mean just as much as whether she's black or a woman. So don't go and use that. So you're left with the question of, is she being effective? And the answer is no. And in fact, by the way, this is also endemic of another problem. Joe Biden isn't doing this. Biden got elected to the big seat. Kamala Harris got elected to the little seat. And she's trying to handle U.S. politics on an international level, which is the job of the big seat. This is what this is why it's called the Biden administration, even though they want to rename it the Biden-Harris administration. The Biden administration, led by Joe Biden, is supposed to handle this. He handed this off to her, and she doesn't even know why it's important whether or not she should be at the border. Isn't that infuriating? Dow mentions that I saw a report that Trudeau was told by an aide that was part of Biden's entourage at G7 that Kamala would be president by 2022. Well, if you may remember, Dow, and many people may not, we have been saying on this program since November, after the election, we have said that we believe Kamala Harris will be taking over, that Joe Biden will not finish 4 years. And I have to credit this to, we originally thought that Joe Biden may make it 6 months. But to the credit of our good friend and libertarian Larry Sharp, he mentioned that no, the answer is they're going to get rid of Joe Biden after the midterm elections in 2022, so that Kamala Harris can have 10 years as president. That she would get 2 years for replacing Biden, and then the full limit of 2 terms. That would be the only way she could do it, is the maximum amount of years she could have is 10. And so, therefore, she would be able to run twice for re-election, and once she has the 2 years. So we've been talking about that for a long time. Yes, you do remember, but many people who may not have seen the show may not have heard us say that before. So we've been saying this since November. And now we hear Trudeau. And I absolutely believe that if we have other world leaders, they are watching this, they are seeing. Why? Because when South Korea came to the United States, their president, who did they speak to? Kamala Harris. And what did Kamala Harris do to our ally, one of our biggest allies in the Pacific nations? She wiped her hand. She insulted him and therefore insulted the Korean people on international news, which is absolutely insane. Which shows that not only is she just a bad, she's maybe has some bad preferences, but more importantly, that doesn't understand diplomacy. I don't care if you don't want to shake the hand of a South Korean, you don't wipe your hand on international TV as it is being broadcast live. You don't do that. Even if you think he's absolutely horrendous, if you don't like South Korean people, you don't do that on international live TV. But she did. And she's in charge of our South American, our immigration policy. And she won't go to the border where the problem is. And she's coming up with solutions that don't address the problem in the first place. And she's not willing to fix the problem. And when she's confronted with questions about what she's doing, she lies to people's faces as if she thinks they don't understand and laughs. And you mean to tell me that you think other world leaders aren't watching this and going, oh my God? And yes, Dal, I do think that they're going to use Article 25 on Joe Biden. Absolutely. That he is, due to mental instability, that they're going to remove him and put Kamala Harris in his place. And Kamala Harris, who was rejected by Democrats for a year. This is during the primary of 2020, the 2020 election primary. She never got more than 5% of support from Democrats, even the far left, even the progressives. No one liked her on their side, on the left. No one trusts her. No one believes in her on the left. And now she is the one who's going to take prominence. And I have to tell you, looking at what she is doing and talking with world leaders, that should be conversations that Joe Biden's having. And looking at her addressing the issues that are being handed to her, like the immigration crisis, she is failing at every single step. And saying, well, she's a woman, or saying that she's a person of color does not excuse her failures, which is another affliction hurting the United States and the world. This idea that, well, everything is excused by someone's color of skin or their gender or their sexual preference or their sexual identity. No, because none of that changes. I don't care if Kamala Harris were gay and she's a person of color and she's a woman, or if she was short and if she was fat. I could care less, because none of those things take away from the fact that she is a liar, that she is inefficient, and that she has caused more problems internationally than she has fixed. And she has shown such a great weakness to the United States, of the current administration running the United States, that we have seen Russia laugh in our faces. We have watched China scold the United States for being weak. And we have seen North Korea and Iran decide that they can activate their militaries and try and abuse us to take advantage of us. If that is not an affliction, I don't know what is. And again, if you think I am wrong, phone number 607-242-1582. If you think I'm misunderstanding news that we are presenting to you, if we are if our connection of the information is incorrect, we want to hear what you have to say. You can reach us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and DLive. We want to hear your thoughts. Leave it in the comments. Even if you're watching this after the show, leave a comment. We want to hear what you have to say. Because I have to tell you, I don't think we're misunderstanding. But you're not hearing this from the rest of the news media. You're not getting these connections. You're not seeing how bad the problem is. And I don't care if the problem was bad before, because yes, it was bad in the Obama administration. And there were aspects that may have been bad under the Trump administration. And yes, there were bad elements under the Bush administration. And we can go back and back and back, and I can't name a president that didn't have some kind of problem. But I can tell you that the magnitude of the problems that we are seeing now, the magnitude of weakness that we are seeing right now, is insane. It is an affliction that is crushing the United States, just like as if it were a disease. Because we are watching the impact on the inflation, on deflation, happening at the same time. We are watching the problem of the disrespect from nations around the world. Even as we're told, the G7 love Joe Biden. Everyone loves Joe Biden, except no one's listening to Joe Biden. As much as they keep telling us they love it's not Trump, and they love Joe Biden, and he's such a great guy, he's also someone they're not listening to. That no one is paying attention to him, and no one thinks the United States is strong. And they think that because the United States isn't strong. We've been making mistakes all over the place, and it's getting worse. You think I'm wrong? Let me show you something. What many people may not have noticed is with Reuters, as we see, that as it was reported today, there was a Syrian hospital that was hit with artillery attacks, and at least 13 people were killed. Now, a lot of people may not know what's going on here, and I'm going to explain how this is very important to the United States, and it shows us the weakness and the affliction that we have going on right now. So I want you to watch this very carefully. So what happened is there is a group. It is the Syrian Kurdish YPG. Now, if you watch this show for any amount of time, you've heard us talk about this before, that the YPG, which is the Syrian Democratic Forces, or in other words, the U.S.-backed military force, they committed this attack. That's what's being stated around the world. As reported by Syria, we've seen that Syria has said this is the group. And we know that Turkey thinks that the YPG is a terrorist organization. In fact, we've talked about this before on the show. In fact, we were talking about it back in July 29th of 2015. We first mentioned that this group, the Syrian Kurds, which is this organization, the Kurds of Syria, or otherwise known as the People's Protection Unit, or YPG, and the larger organization, which is the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or the PKK, are a group of terrorists that are backed by the United States government. And they have been backed under the Obama administration. This was an Obama administration outreach. They helped to fund and to organize a terrorist group in in Iraq, fighting in Syria, that is also attacking our ally, Turkey. And that same group that we have been funding since the Obama administration and under the Biden administration, that same group just bombed the hospital. And what we have seen as a result of that is that the Turkey, not Syria, Turkey turned around and returned fire. That they decided to fire against and attack the KPG. This is from the Jerusalem Post. So if you don't believe Reuters, when they made their statement, this is from the Jerusalem Post as well. That we have a group of terrorists. Turkey has identified them. They are terrorists. They have been terrorists since 2015. They have been terrorists since the Obama administration started providing them with funding, weapons, and training. That group, which attacks our ally, again, one of the few people that we can rely on, and Turkey isn't even our best ally. We're talking the Middle East. This is not another Israel. They are lukewarm friends at best. And Turkey is busy attacking, and they're pissed at the United States because we are funding terrorism again. Not directly like we did with Iran, but directly with the YPG. And this is because of the Biden administration. It's what the Biden administration, this is what Obama did. And the Biden administration does everything that the Obama administration did. They're doing the same thing. And Kamala Harris isn't smart enough, I would say, to even be aware that this is a problem. No one is addressing this. And you aren't hearing this from any US-based media. No one else has mentioned this to you. I mean, I want you guys to tell me, have you heard this from anywhere else in the American news media? Is there any other American news agency that has been talking about the YPG, the Kurdish terrorists, besides this channel since 2015? More recently, have they been telling you how there has been a buildup and that under the Biden administration, just like the Obama administration, that we have been funding and helping these terrorists? Mind you, the Trump administration didn't get rid of all the funding. I will be on it. To be fair is fair. Trump administration didn't get rid of them, but he didn't increase the funding. He didn't increase the training. He wasn't, and they were smart enough, at the very least, under the Trump administration, to not get busy. They weren't doing anything. The YPG was relatively calm and quiet. And they certainly weren't bombing hospitals under the Trump administration. But under the Biden administration, which is exactly the same as the Obama administration, they seem to be very happy with bombing hospitals. Hospitals. This is the kind of stuff that we scream at at Iran and the terrorism, the global terrorism of Iran. We scream at them. We bomb them for these kind of things. I'm stunned by this. And again, this goes to an affliction of the United States, an affliction of inefficiency, of just not paying attention to the details, of making really poor decisions and trying to hide it from the American people, assuming that we are too stupid to go onto the internet and to look up a search from Israel, from Reuters, to see what's going on in the world. Dow mentions that they love Biden because they can ignore Biden, speaking about the G7 and other world leaders, because he's talking about the way he's touted. He knows Putin. He knows Chairman Xi of the Xi Jinping of China and the communists, that he knows his counterparts in Iran because they made the Iran nuclear deal. Well, none of these people that he seems to know seem to care that he's in power and that Kamala is right behind him trying to handle everything and failing. Dow goes on to say, didn't hear about the Syrian attack until today from me. Withdrawing American support and funding from that corner of the world needs to be as much of a priority as with the defunding of the Soviet Union, of the Chinese government, Chinese Communist government. You know what I want to hear? Where are the kids in the colleges that are there to tell you that Che Guevara and Chairman Mao are such great, wonderful people, that socialism is the godsend of the universe, that the only way to fix this is to be more like them? Where is they want us to be out of Palestine. They want us to be out of Syria. They want to leave our allies like Turkey and Israel by themselves after or while we are funding terrorist organizations. And I will hold that against any president, I don't care left, right, or in the center. If you're funding terrorism, there is a problem. I was upset with the Obama administration because they funded terrorism. John Kerry said so. He was Secretary of State under Obama. And he admitted, January 2016, he admitted on news, on the left-wing news, he admitted that the money, $450 million, as I recall, $450 billion was being spent, was being given to Iran, and that was being used for global terror. Well, the numbers are a lot smaller here. We're spending tens of millions of dollars on the YPG, which is used by the YKK to create terror. There is a problem. And this is happening because the socialists, the progressives, think this is a good thing. And that is creating more of a problem in the Middle East. And we have been watching this problem in the Middle East grow literally from January 21st, once Biden had power, from January 21st, as we showed on this program, that he was sending troops. He increased the troops in Syria the first day that he was in power. And this is the result of that. Dow mentions, isn't it funny? You talk with neighbors and maybe 1 in every 10 that I speak with know the dangers of communist ideology and don't like the attacks against individual rights. Because, we have colleges, we have our entertainers that are telling us, no, communism is great. Look at LeBron James. Communism's fantastic. How dare you talk against communism? That's LeBron James who's saying that. We're listening to all the entertainers who are falling over themselves, like John Cena, telling us how wonderful and how important communism is. We're seeing that you can't make a movie in Hollywood at all without making sure that you're somehow talking about China in a positive light. They're always part of the heroes. They're always part of the good guys. And every movie has to have some part of it taking place in China. And that's fine. Movies are movies. Heroes can be any color, any creed, from anywhere in the world. I don't care about that. But if you're going to do that, and you're making it contemporary, and these movies are highlighting the fact that China is communist, at the same time that they're saying they're part of the good guys, and that they're integral to the benefit of the world, then that's a problem. And if you think I'm making that up, if you think I don't understand, have you seen the movie Independence Day 2? Did you see I forget, Independence Day Resurgence or something like that? But more importantly, it was the sequel to Independence Day. Independence Day 2 focused, and everything that happened positively happened because of China. We had to have China involved. We had to have their support. Look at the movie The Martian with, what's his name? Jason Bourne. And remember, we couldn't they're sending rockets to try and save, what's his name? Jason Bourne. And they're trying to save him. And of course, we need the rockets from China, those secret rockets. And if we didn't have them, he would die. China, the good guys, even though they're a communist government. And they were talking about the fact that they had to keep their communist government secrets, but they wanted to do the humanitarian thing. Are you kidding me? These are the same people who are killing people right now, that are committing a genocide right now. And Hollywood's telling you they're the good guys. They would actually save someone. They would give up government secrets to save one man as they kill 1 million people in their own country right now. Isn't that sickening? I mean, you can tell me, Mike, you're wrong. I want to hear why. Dow mentions that yet in social media circles, legacy media state, capital spheres of influence, and nationally, there is a huge voice in support of communism. Whoosh! Excuse me, folks. Had someone walk in while I was taping, and I did not hear them come in, so it kind of surprised me. Usually when I'm doing the show, there isn't anyone around. Hey, you're okay. Just relax. Oh, that surprised me. Okay, so you get to see me, surprised and shocked. Hey, don't leave. You can hang out. So,
I just couldn't get diapers.
okay, well, they're over there. All right, well, let me know what's going on, because, all right, I got half an hour.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, folks. Like I said, I was shocked. Someone walked into the studio, and I was not expecting anyone while I'm taping. And I get very involved in paying attention to you. But again, we are focusing on the wrong things. And again, this is an affliction. This is something that is destroying America and the world. Whether we're actively funding terrorism, either directly with the Kurdish YPG, or we're doing it with Iran and its global terror as the leader of global terror in the world, or whether it's us misrepresenting what the Chinese government, the literal communist Chinese government, is doing right now in killing, genociding people, as we have our entertainers lying to our faces, telling us, no, they're great. They're great people. Don't mind the fact that they are taking people out of the government of Hong Kong and throwing them as prisoners of political prisoners, and throwing into jail cells, and no one gets to see them for years on end, if ever. Don't worry about the genocide that's going on there. And we have a leader like Kamala Harris and a leader like Joe Biden who won't even talk about it. And we have a G7 that won't do anything about it. Not even on the issues that they care about, which is global warming, let alone the issues that everyone else is worried about, which are far more important. Jonathan mentions a nice jump scare. yeah, it was a jump. It did get me. John, it is great to see you. And I know, John, I know we're all sad about the loss of our friend. So I'm glad that you're with us today. I know you watch the show from time to time. So, folks, I'm looking at this and I am worried about these afflictions because it's just like a human body. And the more of these afflictions that you have, the worse that it gets. Let me talk about the last thing that I think is an affliction. Switching gears, sort of. But this is an affliction of freedom. This is an affliction of misrepresentation, of lies that are being told to you right now. It was on June 7th. A lot of people didn't notice that the Justice Department issued a new rule. They created a way to make red flag laws in every state in the nation. I'll say it again. The Justice Department, as you can see, this is from the Justice Department of the United States. On June 7th, they came out with rules and a model to create red flag laws. Now, if you followed this program at all, you know, besides the fact that we are a Second Amendment advocate on this channel, more importantly, I have told you and I have gone over for years now how red flag laws are the worst thing that could possibly happen for your freedom. They deny you freedom of speech. They deny you your Second Amendment rights. They deny you your Fourth Amendment rights, your Fifth Amendment, your 10th Amendment, your 15th Amendment, that these are absolute slaps in your face. There is no such thing as due process. The government can do anything it wants to you if it can pass a red flag law. And we are seeing that throughout the nation. And as you have seen, and anyone who's watched this, Dal, John, Mavis, and anybody, you can all comment, and anyone who's watching, please do let me know. I have explained clearly, and I'm one of the leading voices in this nation, believe it or not, on red flag laws. I have been following these laws in every state over and over again. And I can tell you that this is dangerous. It is a lack of, if for no other reason, it sets the precedence that you can be punished by the government at the local, state, and federal level without ever committing a crime. That is the backbone. That is the means by which red flag laws operate. You don't commit a crime and you get punished. And after they have punished you for not committing a crime, then you get to go to court and try and prove that you are innocent of the problem in the first place. I don't care how you want to apply that to any other aspect of life. I don't care if it's crossing the street, buying a car, getting a pair of jeans. There is no other aspect of life in America and any of the free nations of the world, first and second world nations. You can be in Germany, you can be in England, you can be in Canada, Australia, Peru. I don't know of another nation where the government that is supposed to be a free and or democratic government, where they will punish you without you ever committing a crime and then go about the process of saying, hey, you're free. If that is not an affliction against freedom, if that is not an affliction against the United States and the rest of the world, I don't know what is. And I know Canada has a lot of problems because they restrict people's freedom to say things. And they will punish people for saying the wrong things. If you speak and they don't like it in Canada, they can and they will arrest you, throw you in jail, and fine you. But there's a law in place that you can break, which is to say something that the government doesn't like, and then you will be punished. Is it restricting your freedom to be able to speak? Yes, it is. That's C16 and C10 for those who are more familiar with Canada. The laws C16 and C10 restrict your ability to speak, that you cannot say certain words. But at least that is a law. And as much as it is an infringement on your freedom, it is a law that you can break and then you will be punished. The red flag laws, there is no law to be broken. All it requires is someone says, I don't trust you. I don't like what you're doing. That's all it takes. I don't like what you're doing. I don't trust you. That's all it takes. And then you will have a SWAT team at your door at 5 a.m, breaking down your door to take your property, to take away your children. And yes, they will, as a consequence of the law, take away your children and destroy your life on social media, destroy your life at your job, destroy your life in your local community, demonize you, turn you into a villain. And after that has all been done, as we have documented on this show for years, then they will turn around and say, oh, by the way, you can try and prove if you're innocent now after the damage has been done. That is a red flag law. That has always been red flag laws. And now the United States government, in the form of the Justice Department, is going out and they are saying that they have created a way to make laws in every state in the nation. By the way, they don't have that right. That is not how laws are made in the United States. There is a reason why we have a Congress. And to have the government decide what laws are going to be in every single state is the same thing as the government saying these are the laws for the nation. Congress makes that decision, not the Department of Justice, which is the Biden administration. The Biden administration does not get to make law, and yet that is exactly what they are doing here. And if you want to tell me, and call in, and by the way, hey, Hot Chicks is with us. Thank you for joining us. And you want to call in, or you want to be on the show, and you want to leave us a comment here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or call in 607-242-1582, and you want to tell me that you think I'm wrong. I want to hear this. But it is a fact that Congress makes laws, but if you have the Department of Justice, which is the Biden administration, and if they are telling states, here is how your law is going to work, these are the rules, this is the structure of your law, that is making law. That is a violation of the Constitution. It is a usurping of power. It makes you useless. And worse than that, on top of that problem, they're not just taking away your power. They're not just usurping your freedom. They're also putting in place the means to be able to punish you without you ever committing a crime. And that is insanely powerful and insanely a problem. And let me show you what it is. So, according to the Department of Justice, they have just released that, and I know most people have never heard this. The average American citizen didn't follow this, and the average American citizen has not gone to the Department of Justice, as you can see on the screen, and the links will be in the description, where you can go and see. And this is their guidelines for creating laws that they don't have a right to do. By the way, people are telling me, well, Mike, they're only putting together a guideline with the full force and power of the government. You know what this is like? Jason Garnar, who I happen to know, who is the Broome County executive, he put together a Operation Crush COVID. You can look back on the show. We have done episodes on that. And this was at the height, back in April of 2020, at the height of the crisis and the isolation. And he made a public statement with the full force and power of the county executive, the county government, telling the American people that they should be in solitary confinement every other day, that you could not leave your home for any reason every other day, that you are a prisoner every other day because he said so, even though he didn't have the power to do it. And he said he didn't have the power. But he put it in a press conference. He talked to the news media. The news media put it out as a story saying Operation Crush COVID. You should stay at home. That was in the news media. He said that. And that's the same thing we see with the Justice Department right now. They don't have the power to do that. It is an absolute abuse of power. It hurts the public. It damages you directly. And they know they can't get away with it, but they put it in the cushion of, well, we're just suggesting this is a guideline. That's a lie. It's a farce. It is an abuse of power, and they know it. And I know Jason. I know Jason Garnar, County Executive Garnar. I'm not saying that he's a bad, evil man. I don't want that to come across. He overreached his power, and I came out and I smacked him down on that, as I am right now, because it was wrong. And I don't care what political party he's with, that is wrong. Same thing with the Department of Justice right now. It is wrong for them to put a guideline to tell every state, this is the way you put this law together, because only 19 states have this. Well, actually 18 states in Washington, D.C. So only 18 states have this. The rest of the country for the last, well, since 21 years, have completely rejected red flag laws. They're not a new idea. They came out in 1999 in Connecticut. This is not a new concept. And every state, 30 states of the nation have rejected this because it is a horrible idea to punish people for non-crimes just because someone else said so. So I'm very passionate about this, as you can see. And no one noticed this. And the news media did not talk about this. They were not putting this out. They were not going into detail. They never explained red flag laws, as I am explaining to you right now. And they have not addressed the fact that the Department of Justice is now trying to make laws, which means the Department of Justice is the Biden administration. They do what the Biden administration says, which may be Biden or Harris. I don't know. So it is the president trying to create law who cannot do it. The Department of Justice trying to create law that they cannot do it. And what did they say in this? Because I know most people haven't seen it. Now, they say, and all these provisions are exactly the same as you see in every single red flag law that has been put in existence to date. There is no difference. Everything we have ever covered about red flag laws is exactly what they are offering right now. In fact, it is exactly the same as Senate Bill 292, which is offered by Marco Rubio, that we reject, that we think is wrong. I don't care if he's a Republican. He's wrong. It's a bad law. Same thing with the New York State law, that we have had elected officials that have come onto this program. That's Donald Lepardo, Assemblywoman Donald Lepardo, Assemblyman Clifford Crouch, have been on this program and have told us how flawed that law is, how bad this law is, and how it will hurt the American people, and they voted for it anyway. That's what's in this bill right now. Every single flaw. And by the way, there is not one statement in this law, like every law across the country, that is there to protect you. You know, this is going to, according to the Department of Justice guideline, that they're going to put you, if you have this law exists, you're going to be put onto a national database that will prevent you from ever being able to own a firearm, ever. And there is absolutely no statement ever in any law in any of the 18 states in Washington, D.C., that gives you a way to get removed. If you stop this, if you have a red flag that is used against you to take away your children, to take away your property, to put the red stigma on you in front of every one of your neighbors, your workers, everyone, then let me ask you, How do you get rid of that? And it prevents you from ever owning a firearm again, because you will be put on a database that restricts you from ever owning a firearm. And let's say that you then go into court after the punishment has been given to you, and you prove yourself to be innocent of the suspicion that you may want to kill yourself or harm others. A suspicion, not even a proving guilt. And at that moment, you would want to say, take me off of this list, which is called the NICS. Take me off this list so I can be able to own firearms again, to be able to live my life and to get back my Second Amendment rights. And the answer is, there is no way to take you off that list. You have no way to get off that list. Members of Congress have no way to get off of that list. That is a fact. Members of Congress who have had this happen to them and are put onto this list cannot remove themselves. How are you, the average American citizen, ever going to remove yourself from this? This denies you this absolutely removes your Second Amendment rights whatsoever. Because someone said, maybe I don't like what you do with your gun. I don't like that you have a gun. I want to take it away from you. And it gets even worse, folks, because this is how deep this affliction goes. How deep does this affliction go? Here it is. The first sentence on June 7th. Research has shown that states can save lives by authorizing courts to issue extreme risk protection orders, otherwise known as an ERPO, which is known as a red flag, that temporarily prevent a person in crisis from accessing a firearm. That is a lie. That entire sentence is a lie. There is no truth to this. It is absolutely wrong. I want to be very clear about that. I'm very upset about this because there is nothing true in that statement. Research shows there is no research. I have been studying this for years. I follow everyone on this. There is no research that exists that shows that that red flag laws, whether you want to call them an extreme risk protection order, or you want to call them a red flag, or you want to call them an ERPO, in every single state that they have ever existed in, including Connecticut, which had them since 1999, there is nothing that shows that they actually work. There is no proof that they stop suicides. There is no proof that they stop gun violence whatsoever. None. And I dare the United States Department of Justice to show anything that has conclusive proof, because there is no study that shows it. I will give you one of the studies, which is the implementation and effectiveness of Connecticut's risk-based gun laws. And it states in its summary of the study, and the link will be in the description so you can read this in full for yourself. Using the law to prohibit a suicidal person from purchasing a gun is a good idea, but one that will not work, even with a comprehensive background check system, as long as those who are inclined to harm themselves do not fall into some category of persons prohibited from possessing or purchasing firearms under federal or state law. New research evidence suggests that people who die from self-inflicted gunshot wounds, even those suffering from serious mental illness, typically have no gun disqualifying record of any criminal or mental health adjustment. Indeed, a large majority of them would have been able to legally buy a gun on the day that they used one to end their lives. There's your studies for you. This is the incontrovertible proof that the Department of Justice is telling you that this works. Except the studies themselves tell you there is no proof it works. None whatsoever. There is no proof that it stops suicides. There is no proof that it does anything. In fact, according to the effects of extreme risk protection orders, as printed on April 22nd, 2020, just over 1 year ago, and I'm going to get to the comments in a second, it states by the Rand Corporation, when they have studied this, and they looked at every single study, just as I have, when they looked at every paper, just as I have, when they look at the numbers in every state, just as I have, there is no proof that red flag laws will decrease gun violence, suicide, anything. There is no proof. There is not a single study that proves that effectively. Not one. The Justice Department has lied to the American people. And they did that to advance a goal of the Biden administration in trying to create law that they cannot get through Congress, and they know they can't get it passed through Congress, so they're trying to find another way to pass a law that you don't want. And I'm trying to be as clear as I can about this. Whoop, something just froze. Hold on. Okay. There we go. Sorry, it froze there for a second. But I want to be very clear about this. This is a law that you do not want. It has no benefit to you. It does not make your life better. And how can let me make this as simple as I can to prove this. Does gun crime still happen in Connecticut? The answer is yes. Have there been mass shootings or multiple shootings in Connecticut since they passed the red flag laws? The answer is yes. They have had thousands of people who have had their firearms taken away, and people still, to this day, in the same exact numbers, commit suicide with a firearm and commit shootings and gun violence exactly the same year after year, with them having this for 20 years. And that is true in every single state. Look at New York State. Look up the GIVE report. The numbers don't lie. The amount of gun violence, the amount of suicides stay consistent every year, even if you have a red flag law in your state. It does not matter. 628 red flag actions have been done actually at least 628 red flag actions have been done in New York State since November of 2020 that I have based on New York State's direction, and it has not stopped violence. Matter of fact, there's a case of it creating a suicide in Utica, New York, in Oneida County, where a man had a red flag action used against him. It destroyed his business, destroyed his community life, social media and personal life, to the point that he committed suicide. That is a fact. Yeah, it gets me really upset. It gets me really upset. And so, yes, this is a symptom of the afflictions in America that are destroying our nation. Because again, it is a symptom where we see inefficiency, where we see ineffectiveness, where we see deception, where we see that your freedom and your rights and your life are being destroyed, eaten away. It is a silent killer. And I can equate that the same way that I equate diabetes. As we started the program talking about diabetes, it will get you. It creeps up on you. It destroys you. It destroys your livelihood. It causes a problem. And it is and it is subtle. It is quiet. It creeps up on you. Now, you can tell me, Mike, I disagree. And I believe in free speech. I believe in the First Amendment. And if you think I'm wrong, I have never, ever stopped anyone from saying what they believe. I have never, what is the word? Blocked anyone from being able to speak on this program. If you're on the left, the right, the libertarian, Republican, conservative, part of Antifa. I don't stop people from speaking. In fact, I encourage it. If you think I'm wrong, then tell me. But here's the thing. If you have been watching this, if you are seeing the sources that I am presenting, if this is information you have never seen before, then I ask you, subscribe, share this with other people. If you see the conclusions, if you see that I am going through the evidence with you, and it makes you say, I need to know more, subscribe, share this with people. If you disagree, please, absolutely comment. Even if you are watching this after the fact, comment and share this with people so that we can all understand and grow and learn. And subscribe. And I keep saying subscribe because it's important. Because without a subscription, without more people being able to see this, I guarantee you that Facebook, that YouTube, that Twitter, they are going to try and bury this as deep as they can. They have been doing that for a while now. They will definitely do it on this subject because they do not want you to be able to have a conversation. They do not want to hear your voice. I know for a fact that they sometimes block the comments that we see here. There it is. Comments that we see right over here. They block that. I've had people tell me after the fact, after a show, that Facebook, YouTube, they block people from being able to comment. So I guarantee you, they don't want you to know. And the only way to fix that is to spread this, to get more people to hear it, to share it with people, and to ask people to, subscribe so the algorithm carries it and lets more people see this. Even if you don't agree with me, because I'm not asking you to agree. I'm not demanding that you agree. This isn't Antifa. This isn't Black Lives Matter. I'm not a Democratic Socialist of America. I don't require you to be subservient. This is a conversation. We get to speak. We all get a voice. As you can see with Mavis, Hot Chicks, Jonathan, Dal, so many others that are speaking on this program, you get to say what you want. You can always call in 607-242-1582. The phone is always on when we go live because your voice matters from anywhere in the world. Like our friend Agent Black in Great Britain can tell you about. Like some of the people watching from Canada, some of those in Germany, in Peru, in India, the one or two people in China who watch this program. Please, you're all welcome because we will allow you to have free speech. And I think it's important because when we're talking about things like we're talking about today, where we have a G7 that is more concerned about trying to take away your ability to have electricity and at the same time give that ability to people like Russia and to allow China to pollute the air, that when we're watching as we see Kamala Harris laugh in the face of the American people because someone asked her, why is she not effective? Why doesn't she know what she's doing? And other world leaders are watching this saying, they're ineffective, they're useless, they are lost. Yeah, this is affecting you. When the United States government is supporting and funding global terror, both indirectly, every time that we give sanctions or remove sanctions from Iran and fund Iran, as well as through the PKG, yeah, that's a problem. And as we watch that the Biden administration is trying to circumvent our Congress and to impose laws against you that will punish you without due process, removing your rights for a non-crime. What affliction is worse than that? Losing your rights and your freedoms? Losing your ability to be free? I don't know of a bigger affliction that I could possibly name. But maybe you think I'm wrong. And again, I believe in the First Amendment. If you think I'm wrong, I want to hear your answer. Think I'm wrong, tell me why. I'm not going to silence you. but I want to hear why. And the answer isn't, well, Mike, you're just a Republican. It has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I could be a libertarian. I could be a socialist for all it matters. And it still doesn't change the fact that the Department of Justice on June 7th, 2021, lied to the American people in saying that they have research that shows that red flag laws work, because there is none, and that it will prevent a person in crisis from accessing firearms, because it doesn't. It does not. It does not stop suicides. It does not prevent suicides. It does not prevent mass shootings. It does not do anything except take away your Second Amendment rights, your Fifth Amendment rights, your Fourth Amendment rights. It just takes away your rights. It takes away your freedom. And by the way, yes, it will also take away your children, as we have explained on this show many, many times. As confirmed by many politicians in both the Democratic and Republican parties at every level of government, from the local all the way through the federal. I don't know. But folks, I am so very concerned about all this, because these are afflictions that are affecting America. But let me go back and talk about what I started the show about. And that is, I miss my friend. And I think it's very important. I want to, if you know anyone who has diabetes, if you think they have diabetes, please do me a favor and get checked out. Please. Diabetes is a silent killer. It's the 7th biggest reason why people die in the United States. And I don't want you to wake up one morning getting ready for work, getting ready to do what you do, and to have to know that a dear and close friend is no longer with us. And I miss him. I miss him a lot. And so today I'm going to end the show a little bit different than usual. I just want to play for you, because my friend Dan Polkorak, was the leader of a band, and that band was called Adam Ate the Apple. And it was great. It's a great band. I love all the guys. They've had several albums, and one of their more recent albums, I want to play you a song from there, just one, that has the lead singer was my good friend Dan Polkorak. And I want you to hear Tyrant just sing. And I want to just take us out on that moment. And so I'm just going to be here, and I'm just going to listen. And I hope you enjoy it, as I miss my friend.
Shot from a cannon, and I've survived. Bruised and battered, but I'm alive. Oh, they say this is the new day. Oh, my friends, won't you show me the way? Who says it's supposed to be easy? Who says it's supposed to be easy. That my soul must be here. Oh, they say this is the new day. Oh, my friends, won't you show me the way? Who says it's supposed to be easy? Supposed to be easy. Survive. Bruised and battered, but I'm alive. Oh, they say this is the new day. Oh, my friends, won't you show me the way? It's supposed to be easy. Who says it's supposed to be easy? Shot from a cannon, and I've survived. Bruised and battered, but I'm alive. Oh, they say this is the new day. Oh, my friends, won't you show me the way? Who says it's supposed to be easy? Who says it's supposed to be easy? Who says it's supposed to be easy?
Hey, Dan, you and Taze, you're headlining heaven now. Keep it rocking.